Hello everyone, and welcome to AutoSense. My name is Evangelos Lucky Papageorg. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers of Massachusetts. We are an association of collision repair facilities, and our goal is to, number one, is to protect the consumers here in Massachusetts. It's our feeling that if consumers are being properly protected, then we as a collision repair facility industry are also being properly protected and are able to be viable and successful in what we do, which is repair vehicles. That is what our expertise is. We accept the liability of doing that. And in that process, the best person we have as an advocate is you, the consumer. So our goal is to make sure that you are educated on all aspects of the collision repair process and your insurance policy. To that end, I have with me today my guest, Nadine Nesbitt from Purple Inc. Nadine is an insurance agent. She's been with us before, so you also know that she's a licensed auto damage appraiser, which makes her uniquely qualified to talk about the different aspects. It's not just a single focus from the insurance side of the equation, but also from the collision repairers side of the equation. Again, welcome Nadine. Thank you for joining us. Previously, we talked about the different types of policies and why it's important to have an agent. I think today what I'd like to do is focus a little bit on what the differences are regarding, say, first-party collision losses and third-party collision losses, and so that people understand what their rights are under those two portions of which are Section 4, or Part 4 and Part 7 of the insurance policy here in Massachusetts. So maybe you could touch a little bit on the language in Part 7. Why don't we start there? I know it's not in numerical order, but that's the one most people, I think, from my own experience, whether they've been at the cause of the accident or had damage done to them, they think they need to go through this particular part of their policy. So maybe if we explained a little bit what the differences are between first and third party, and then just give us a little background on what first policy coverage does for you.
Sure. Okay, collision in Massachusetts is coverage number 7, and it's coverage for your car, the policyholder's car. It pays, quoting directly from the Part 7, under this part we will pay for any direct and accidental damage to your auto caused by a collision. Collision is a very simple concept, smash. If you are at fault, there's something called a deductible. That's what you pay first before the insurance company will pay the balance. Collision is, so let me give you 2 examples of that. If I, by accident, back up and hit my rear bumper in the tree behind me, and it's a little dent, and the damage is around my deductible, let's say $500, and there are many different deductibles, many different carriers offer many different things. I may not put a claim in because it would be so silly to get the insurance company involved, have a situation on my record forever. It doesn't last just 6 years anymore, just so you know that. I may want to just go to the shop and just like a automotive repair, I need brakes, I need my bumper fixed. That would be a small claim. If the claim's larger, and now I've backed into the tree and my entire quarter panel is damaged and it's hitting my tire so I can't even drive, then what happens is I would pay my deductible first to the shop to repair my car, and then the insurance company would negotiate with the repairer for the balance of the repairs. That's a usual situation. That's collision.
So, maybe a slightly easier way of describing it is if the overall repair is $5,000 as an example, and you have a $500 deductible, your insurance company is going to stroke you a check for $4,500.
In essence.
Yeah, they're going to remove that first $500 because that is your obligation to pay to the shop. It doesn't mean that you're going to get $5,000 worth of work for $4,500.
And I wanted to add that collision is an optional coverage. So I have had people call me when they're in a pickle saying, my company's not paying, and I'll say, let me see your policy. And lo and behold, they didn't buy collision, they bought limited collision perhaps, which is a totally different coverage. Or they didn't buy collision at all, because in Massachusetts, it's not the law. You do not have to carry coverage on your own car for damages caused by a collision. That's pretty scary.
That you were at fault at.
Now, lien holders do have the right to say, wait a minute, we have an interest to protect your vehicle. We want to make sure that if something happens, it's going to get paid for. So when you add the lien holder, and then it becomes a requirement on the lien holder side, but Mass law is not requiring it. And many people ignore what their lien holder says, or don't have a lien holder. You know, they've paid off their loan and all of a sudden think, I'm going to save money, and they remove collision. So it's a very important coverage to review and figure out the value of your vehicle, and make sure you carry it.
And two things there, I have found it unique, not so unique, I guess I should say, is the minute you drop your collision, it's almost as if you've painted a target on your vehicle. It's not something that you want to be driving around with. And yes, other people sharing the road with you are to have collision or damage for doing damage to someone else's property, which is the part 4 that we'll be talking about. But in a lot of times, and I know you'll touch on it, is, you know, the limits of that part of the policy may not be enough to cover the damage to your vehicle. And again, now you're going to be reaching into your pocket. You may have saved a little bit up front when it comes to purchasing the policy. It's that gamble that you're keeping your fingers crossed, or however else you try to protect yourself from a catastrophic loss. But the policy is there to protect you in case that situation should arise. And, you know, we've talked about it. That's why it's important that people don't just look at the bottom line. There's several insurance companies out there now that say, you know, don't get more than you need. You should be able to determine what you need for coverage. I know as an agent that kind of makes you frown a little bit, or maybe a lot. Why don't you touch on that a little bit?
Well, first I want to say why I think collision is a great idea. Collision is fabulous because it not only covers you if somebody else hits you and it's their fault, but it covers you for your repairing your vehicle if it's your fault. It also covers you if it's a hit and run. Now, the deductible applies if you're at fault or you don't know who hit you, but the deductible can be waived if you know who did hit you. The situation happens so often where it's a he said, she said, or she said, he said. Now, Lucky rear ends me, and I say, Lucky rear ended me. I don't have to pay my deductible. And you say, no, Nadine backed up into me. My insurance company is going to believe me. Lucky's insurance company is going to believe him because they don't want to pay. They're going to say, oh, Lucky was right. Now we're in a situation where I may not be able to use Lucky's policy because it's not my policy. Your policy has certain parameters of what it will pay under certain circumstances. But that's only if they're going to believe my story. And you're the customer. So you tell me how fair that looks.
Right. And again, in that instance, am I wrong in assuming that it's the insurance company that benefits on both sides? Enough said.
Remember those checks? I've never seen an insurance company check bounce. They are fantastic number crunchers.
Right. So we've touched a little bit on the importance of Part 7. What about Part 4? What are people's rights under Part 4 of an insurance loss?
So Part 4 is mandatory. It's one of the 4 things that you must buy in Massachusetts. Currently, and for the last, since I've been selling insurance almost 40 years, the limit that is required in the state is $5,000 under property damage. Very small limit. Most cars I see on the road are worth way more than that. So let's say I'm a student, the premium's high, I went to 1-800, get a low premium, and I don't buy collision because my car's old, as they told me. Oh, your car's old, you don't need that. So I don't buy collision. Lucky rear ends me, I go to his policy under property damage. He admits that he slid into me. He was so excited to come to BCAM today and wasn't paying attention. And so he admits to it. Now that's establishing his fault, and his company is going to stand up and pay for the damage. However, they are excited. Yes, you only chose the bare minimum limit of $5,000. Well, what if my vehicle is worth $10,000? Guess who gets to pay that? Lucky. Because I'm going to go to small claims court, and there is no longer a limit in small claims court regarding automotive lawsuits or claims and so forth. So I want him to pay above his $5,000 limit. And what if I needed a rental car? His property damage would cover me, subject to his limit. It's very interesting, an additional point about coverage and cost. So if the state says you have to buy $5,000, insurance companies must offer an additional amount, but they don't have to offer their highest amounts to everyone. Interestingly enough, if you've had an accident or two, the company isn't willing to give you $250,000 of property damage. If you've never had an accident, they're willing to give it to you. And oftentimes, the price for higher coverage is almost the same price as the bare minimum coverage. So it's really important to look at those things too. But then you take into the factor in the same situation, I don't carry collision, I had a rental car. Property damage would cover for that. The loss of value. Now my car's repaired, it looks fantastic to me, I'm psyched, but I go to sell it and I'm out $2,000 or whatever number, make up a number, because my car has had pre-loss condition.
You mentioned the value of the vehicle. It's, to me anyways, it's irrelevant, the value of the vehicle. If you're driving a $5,000 vehicle or a $20,000 vehicle, it's the repair costs that need to be covered. So the value of the car comes into play if it's going to be a total loss potentially, which is something we'll touch on in a little bit. But that's why, and I've had it happen in several instances, that's what the customer who came to my shop faced, is they were not at fault in the loss, but the overall liability that the other party's coverage had was that $5,000 limit. And it's, as you said, it's almost like an umbrella. It's a ceiling. You can't go any higher than that. It includes any rental that you might have. So, if the car is going to be tied up for 15 days even, and nowadays you can't get a rental vehicle that I'm aware of for $30 a day. You're talking, $500 of that $5,000 limit's already chewed up in the form of the rental vehicle. What if there was a tow? Is a tow covered as part of that?
Sure is.
It falls under that same.
What if you hit my car and bounce off of my car and now you go into B-cam front door and now there's a whole door and a wall that needs to be fixed? That's property damage coverage.
Right.
If your limit is $5,000, who's going to get paid the $5,000 limit? My guess is probably the first one to submit against your policy, but then everybody else has no access to your coverage.
That's a key point then. The $5,000 is not per
claimant.
Per person in that loss,
right.
It's per loss.
Right. But it's per loss every single loss. So you could have 365 losses, one a day, conceivably, and that limit would apply to each and every one. But probably the insurance company is going to figure out a way to get rid of you before that happens.
Yeah, like after the second or third loss. And we've talked about it before, under the either policy, I guess, either part of the policy, if you are someone who has several incidences, the insurance companies have the ability to make sure that they're going to recoup their loss.
Of course.
And that's done in the form of, I think we used to call them surcharges.
That's one of the many, many, many ways now that we've gone to manage competition. It used to be a straight surcharge system. When I started 40 years ago, it was one incident was $50 more a year for 3 years. Second incident was $100, and your third, whether it was a ticket or an accident, was a $150 a year. After about 10 years, they said, oh, that's not enough money to get reimbursed for everything we're paying out. And they went up to $300. Then they went to 6 years of surcharge. When our system changed from state control, it went to insurance companies can have their own wonderful magical formulas of what they're going to charge for which coverages. So there are so many different factors. I've gone into a company that says, hey, yes, Lucky, we want to insure you. And then I go into rate, and they pull up your prior history. And this prior history will go back to high school if they have been able to access it. Insurance companies are all friends in behind the scenes, and they all have these wonderful systems that they report the losses so that all the other carriers can know what's going on too. And they can charge you because you had incidences, glass losses. Yes, that's not so chargeable, but I just had a situation where a company offered to write somebody and 2 glass losses showed up and they were getting their money back big time. It was a huge additional premium from the original quote before that score was run.
Wow, that's amazing. It's definitely slanted, and that's why it becomes such a challenge from a collision repair standpoint as well. When someone comes in and says, how much is this going to cost me to fix? And a repairer takes on a huge liability, because everything that we do to the vehicle needs to make sure that it brings it back to pre-loss condition, make sure that that vehicle is going to react in exactly the same way as it was intended to when the manufacturer designed it. And a lot of the technology changes that we've experienced over the last 10 years, 5 years is huge. There's more code in a vehicle right now from a computer standpoint guiding a vehicle than in the rocket that went to the moon the first time. And all those intricacies have to be able to communicate with one another. It's called ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. It's watching the road in front of you, it's watching the road on either side of you. And I was at a meeting last week, and one of the gentlemen described the fact that if the targeting area for that camera is off by 1 millimeter at the vehicle, at 100 yards down the road, it has you 10 feet further to your left or your right, depending on where that variance is coming from. And we understand that as collision repairers, and that liability falls to us. That, as part of the repair process, we do scanning in advance. A lot of people are under the misunderstanding that if there's no, what we used to call idiot lights on your dash, that everything's functioning correctly. Yep, those dashboards are very integrated now. There's so many messages that come up, but not everything is covered there. You have to scan a vehicle after a loss, regardless of how minor. Painting bumpers used to be, a task. It was, took some expertise. But nowadays, you have to make sure that you're not increasing what's called the mill thickness, which is, basically a layer of paint over any of the sensors, because that's going to affect how that vehicle sees the road in front of it, beside it. Every part of the vehicle is being controlled by that.
Besides that, it's a safety issue. Your bumper that now needs repair is what kept you safer than the old cars that had no bumpers or didn't have cushions behind the bumpers. That's so important. And you mentioned something. Wouldn't it be novel if we could all collaborate and work together? So your agent, the consumer, the body shop, and the company could all work together with safety as the focus. It's really an undiscussed topic, unfortunately, frequently. When I'm helping a customer handle a claim, they're forgetting that the most important thing is, if this person, my person that I care about, was rear-ended again, I want to know that that bumper is going to withstand the manufacturer's desired and implemented safety factors.
And it is. Safety is at the core of everything. And one of the biggest issues that we face as collision repairers is, with all the escalating costs when it comes to the parts, the training, the components, one of the things that we've had limited to us is the rate of reimbursement that the consumer gets, which then translates to how much they can pay a collision repair facility when it comes to repairing the vehicle. Those rates have moved a grand total of $10 in 34 years. And I'm sure people would agree with me when they look at their vehicle, and then let's say they look at their lawnmower or a snowblower and say, okay, I just paid $85 an hour to get my snowblower or lawnmower repaired, yet my body shop, who is taking a vehicle that can travel, if you're staying within the speed limits, up to 65 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour, and they're being reimbursed at $40 an hour. The equipment, when you look around a properly equipped collision repair facility, you'll look at one piece of equipment in the corner and, it could be worth $10,000. And not only does the shop have to have that equipment in order for some certifications, in order to do proper repairs, in order to be able to accept the liability that falls upon them to make sure that vehicle is repaired properly, but out of that $40, they're buying the equipment. They're keeping the equipment updated as far as wear and tear and things of that nature. And the technicians have to be paid. And that's a huge issue in our industry right now, that we are losing technicians because, A, no one is coming into the industry through the vocational systems because they can do much better in other fields, and I think you had alluded to it previously, that we are, in a sense, a jack of all trades. We are a plumber, we are electricians, we are, I think you at one time had said something about being dentists. Yeah, we are the doctors for the vehicles. And we have ongoing training that we have to maintain, and all because, we're doing what we love, but you still have to be paid properly to do that. And, young people are not getting into this industry. Our current technicians are aging out. The average age in the facility is in excess of 55, to going on 59, somewhere in that range, and it's getting worse every year. But, going back to, I think, it's important that people know what they should do if they get into a collision loss. So, one of the things that I tell everybody, I says, you have, in today's day in technology, everybody has a cell phone. And, it's very important, I think, to have one of these if you should get into a loss, running and recording and doing whatever.
Of course, you weren't using it while the loss happened. It just happened to be put away.
Yeah, exactly.
But grab it and take a picture of the license plate. That is the most important and first thing you should do, is take a picture of the other person's license plate. So often, people are afraid of surcharges and extra prices and this and that they leave. They forget that we're all humans and you should be a good human and be responsible, but they leave the scene. And now you're stuck with your deductible and everything else that you're stuck with. And if you had just simply gotten a license plate, it would have helped you. I have a wonderful story. I always tell my people, hey, make sure you have pad of paper and a pen in the car, although the last 10 years I say make sure you're not using your cell phone, but take it out and make a picture. But one woman called me and said, I am so glad you told me to get the license plate number. She had in her pocketbook a lipstick, a very expensive lipstick, and she wrote the license plate number on her dashboard. She was driving when another car, a truck and a trailer, hit her. Wow. And kept going. And she's honking and honking and honking and honking, and she kept thinking, I have no pen, I have no paper. Takes out the lipstick, writes the plate number on the dashboard, calls her claimant. We find out that it's very expensive to get this expensive lipstick off of her dashboard. It was covered as part of the claim, and she didn't have to pay her deductible because the person did finally admit after we tracked them down. So make sure you get the license plate number. And don't go into big conversations either at the scene. Just exchange the information. Try to stay calm.
Yeah. Is it something that, is it based on the severity of the loss? Is it something you advise people to, say, bring the police in, or any other documentation that you think that they should be getting while they're there?
The more information you have, of course, the better. I've had situations where customers said, I called the police to come out and help us exchange information, and they said, if the damage is under $1,000, we're not coming out. So every claim is different. Every claim, I could write novels. Each and every person is different, each and every car is different, each and every accident is different. Again, the most important thing is getting each other's information. And if it means you stay in your car and you take a picture of their license plate and call the police, and that's what you're comfortable with, then that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. And we talk about the fact that with the cameras on phones and things of that nature, one of the trends, and it's been an ongoing trend for a very long time now, is insurers saying, oh, just take a picture of it and send us a picture of the damage. As great a quality as the cameras are nowadays, a picture does not do damage proper documentation. At the scene of the loss, I would tell someone, yes, definitely take a picture of the license plate of the other vehicle. Take a picture of the damage to your vehicle. Take a picture from the direction that you were traveling, direction you were going towards, where did this person come from, so you have all the documentation. Because just like a collision repairer, when we're trying to make a case on how a vehicle should be repaired, this is the proper way to fix it, we have all this documentation from the original manufacturer as far as requirements and recommendations. If the person at the scene has a picture and can show exactly what transpired, it's going to save them in the long run. You don't have that, it was a hit and run. You know exactly who it is that struck your vehicle, and you should be able to not have to pay your deductible, which could be anywhere from $3 to, what are they up to now, like $2,000?
$2,500. I have one carrier that will go that high.
Wow, It's amazing.
But you just have to take, use common sense. Let's say that. This is an AutoSense program. Use your common sense. If this happens on Route 9 during rush hour, you're not going to get out and start walking around all the cars and, I don't want you to get hit. I want you to stay safe. So use good judgment and do what you're comfortable with too. If you want to call the police, that's what they're there. They're public servants to work with us and help us.
Right. Excellent point. And a lot of the information that we've talked about is something that, as the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers, we provide to our membership. We have a website, AASP-MA.org, that consumers can go to the front-facing page. There's a myriad of information there. We have videos, things of that nature. There's also a map of the state where all of our members are listed. If you're all the way out in the western part of the state, there are members of our association all across the state, and you can just float over the map and it'll tell you. And I know as an agent, you've brought that up in past occasions, that it's important that your customer feel comfortable with the shop that they're going to. And we pride ourselves, as far as an association, is to educate our members to be the best advocate they can be for the consumer. And the best advocate on both sides of the equation is if the collision repairer and the vehicle owner fully understand what the rights are, what, we talked about sections, part 7 and part 4 of the policy, what the person's rights are. What does it mean to have a limitation, that $5,000 per loss, so that we can explain to a customer what their best options are, and with the aid of an agent, also make that very clear. And hopefully that agent has done what's very important right up front, which is making sure that the owner of the vehicle has all the proper coverages to protect them against any catastrophic incident which they might have.
Or at least to understand what the coverages are. Just because I suggest something to somebody doesn't mean they always take my suggestions. And another couple of things that body shops are that they're teachers. You've mentioned that several times, and they're psychologists. And I mean, you're dealing with trauma. We forget. And it's not just the safety of the car, but now it's the person's life is changed. It changes your life after a serious car accident.
Yep. And that is something, again, that we definitely, we put the consumer first as far as the collision repairer. You come to one of our facilities, you are our main objective. We want to make sure that we as collision repairers are doing the right thing for you, guide you in the right direction, help advocate on your behalf with the insurance company, negotiate with your insurance company, and make sure that you are getting the proper repair and being properly reimbursed to do so. I want to thank you, Nadine, for joining me again today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back on the show, AutoSense, again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.